We begin this broadcast with the fierce fighting raging in Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland. There has been no let-up in the fighting in the Donbas region. Ukrainian forces are battling to prevent Russia taking full control of the city of Sievierodonetsk. The regional governor says constant shelling is making it impossible to evacuate hundreds of civilians trapped in a chemical plant there. Russian troops are also targeting neighboring Lysychansk, where the civilian death toll is mounting. But the Russian military offensive is not just limited to the Donbas region. Ukraine has reported strikes on several cities elsewhere in the country.
A crater in the ground where a Russian missile strike hit. It's been 114 days since the invasion began, and civilians in Azot near the northeastern city of Kyiv still have to live with shelling.
Significant damage was caused to multi-story buildings, private vehicles, and also factory workshops. Moreover, one administrative building owned by Lysychansk village council was damaged.
Workers at the factory that was damaged don't know why they were targeted.
We tested equipment for construction companies. There was no military object in here.
More than 500 kilometers to the south, residential buildings in Mykolaiv hit by missiles. Local authorities say 2 people were killed and 20 wounded. But besides attacks in the northeast and south, the heaviest fighting is currently happening in the eastern Donbas region. In the embattled city of Sievierodonetsk, Ukraine says hundreds of civilians, including dozens of children, are currently trapped in the Azot chemical plant, which has been almost completely destroyed. The regional governor of Luhansk says only a complete ceasefire would allow them to be evacuated. The last city in this battleground region that's still under Ukrainian control is neighboring Lysychansk, but shelling has also increased here in recent days. Yesterday, at least 4 people were killed in Lysychansk in a Russian airstrike on a building that was sheltering civilians. The governor said there was even more shelling today, leaving many dead.
All right, let's take you now to correspondent Emmanuel Shaz. She joins us from the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Emma, what more have you learned about the situation in Lysychansk?
Well, Leila, you've been talking about a war of attrition, and it's really what it has come down to for the past few months and weeks. This heavy shelling that's continuing from the Russian side on Lysychansk, on Severodonetsk. And in Lysychansk, there has been indiscriminate shelling. A school has been completely destroyed. A residential area has also been destroyed. Countless people, civilians, dead in Severodonetsk. In a chemical plant, the Azot chemical plant, over 550 people have taken shelter. They're waiting for evacuation. This is no longer possible. The 3 bridges leading to the city have been destroyed, and now also the motorway, the highway leading in and out of this city has been rendered out of use due to constant shelling. Today, there have also been some advances from the Ukrainian forces in the areas of Zaporizhia and Kherson, but it's really, the war, the fighting intensifies in the West at a time where Russia is, reassembling its troops, also sending more equipment, and really focuses its offensive on the Donbas region. So fighting intensifies, shelling continues, and civilians continue to die.
Well, as fighting intensifies in eastern Ukraine after yesterday's high-profile visit of EU leaders to Kyiv, I understand Ukraine's President Zelensky had another important visitor today?
Exactly. UK's Boris Johnson, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, was here for the second time since the start of the Russian war against Ukraine, second time in Kyiv, and he didn't come empty-handed. He said that the United Kingdom would intensify its support to Ukraine, would also offer more training to up to 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers. So another show of support after four European leaders came here in Kyiv to show that Western Europe was really, that Western allies were really there for Ukraine. A gesture of goodwill, a gesture of support, much appreciated here in Kyiv and by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
In just a few words, Emma, of course, it's been a groundbreaking day for Ukraine. Kyiv received EU candidate status. What was the reaction, the general reaction?
The general reaction is, of course, also a lot of joy at this news. You know, here in Kyiv, a lot of people are pro-European, and also let's not forget that this war is also a war against European values, against democracy, all of the things that Ukraine has been trying to tend to over the past few years. Ukraine has, undertaken so many reforms, and of course there are more to come if it intends to join the European Union, but also a feeling of relief that all those efforts have paid off with this recommendation by the EU Commission for the candidacy of Ukraine. So lots of relief, lots of joy tonight at this announcement.
DW's Emmanuel Shaz reporting from Kyiv, Ukraine. Thank you so much, Emma. Well, in order to keep the hope of EU membership alive, Ukraine must first fend off the ongoing Russian invasion. For this task, they desperately need weapons. Ukraine has repeatedly asked Germany to supply heavy weaponry, with mixed results. Now, a day after visiting Kyiv, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz told Germany's DPA press agency weapons will arrive in time to make a difference in the Donbas region.
We understand that what is needed now is artillery, and this is exactly what we will deliver. At this moment, Ukrainian soldiers are trained in Germany for being able to use the very modern howitzer we will deliver together with our Dutch colleagues. And we also decided together with the UK and the United States that we will deliver multiple rocket launchers, which will be very helpful for fighting from more on a distance. Aside of this, we are really helping with the necessary things. For instance, fighting against drones, helicopters, aircrafts. With a special tank we deliver for this. The training of the soldiers is going on in Germany. At this time also, we will deliver an anti-ballistic system which is able to save Odessa or Kyiv.
All right, let's take you now to our political correspondent, Thomas Sparrow, for more details. That sounds like a very long list of deliveries that the German Chancellor is promising Kyiv. When can Kyiv expect to get all these arms?
Well, you mentioned it in your introduction. The German Chancellor said that they would arrive in time to make a difference in the Donbas. And obviously now the question is what that exactly means. What does in time mean? It's important also to understand a bit of context here, because Germany, and in particular the German Chancellor, have been under a lot of pressure recently about those promised weapons that nevertheless have not been delivered. There seems to be a discrepancy between those promises and the delivery of heavy weapons, and that's one of the criticisms that has been particularly levelled against the German Chancellor and the German government in recent weeks when it comes to weapons in Ukraine. And as such, the German Chancellor then stressed that they would arrive in time. I imagine that statement by Mr. Scholz in that interview will raise even more questions as to when those weapons can be delivered. Some of them, he clearly stated, depend on whether and when those Ukrainian soldiers are trained here in Germany. The delivery will happen only afterwards, but that is not the case with every weapon here involved. So as of now, we know very little concrete measures about when those weapons will actually arrive in Ukraine.
All right, so short on a time frame. On a related topic, the Chancellor was asked about why he continues to talk to President Putin. Let's take a listen to what he answered to that question.
It is absolutely necessary to speak to Putin, and I will continue to do so, as the French president will also. And there are some countries needed and some leaders needed that speak to him, and it is necessary that they are clear. Because when I speak to Putin, I say, please understand that there will be no dictate peace. And if you really believe that you will rob some land and then hope that the times will change and all the things will become normal again, this is a mistake.
The Chancellor there, Thomas, says he doesn't mince his words when he speaks to President Putin. Does this policy of direct engagement with President Putin enjoy widespread backing here in Germany?
There is one element to all of this, which is the military component. We already discussed that. But the other element is a possible political negotiation. And as such, this is also a policy that here in Germany has been pursued with varying degrees of support since the war in Ukraine began. We heard Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor there, stress that he continues and will continue to talk to Vladimir Putin, as other European leaders have done as well. And he stressed the importance of what he described as a fair peace. In other words, a peace that cannot be dictated by Russia, but must be accepted by Ukraine, by the government, but also by the people in Ukraine. So it's important when we look at the war in Ukraine and the reaction coming from Germany and from the EU, by the way, to understand those different components that politicians are following. The military component on the one hand, but obviously also the political component and the possibility of a political solution, which is something that, by the way, I expect was also part of the discussions when Scholz and his European colleagues went to Kyiv in the last few days. I imagine that it was not only about restating that European path for Ukraine, it was also about discussing the possibility of a political negotiation with Russia.
DW political correspondent Thomas Sparrow reporting for you. Thanks so much, Thomas. I want to tell you about some other developments related to the war in Ukraine. Russia has reduced its natural gas exports to Europe for a third consecutive day. Flows to Italy and Slovakia have been cut by half, and deliveries to France have ceased completely. European leaders have called the move political, while Russia is blaming the cuts on a technical problem. Russian President Vladimir Putin says his country is not to blame for rising global food prices. Speaking at the International Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, President Putin instead accused the United States of driving up prices. The president also slammed the sanctions imposed by the U.S. and Europe as reckless and insane.